Hello and welcome to the discussion on role, functioning and power of constitutional and statutory bodies in the era of one-party dominance. So in today's lecture, we will try to understand about the Constituent Assembly. We will try to understand the making of the Constitution a bit. We will try to understand that how using Constitution, we have constitutional bodies and what are your statutory bodies. We'll try to understand that. We'll try to take some examples, that how these constitutional bodies have been misused and how these constitutional bodies have been effective in performing the public functions, and we'll try to understand the negative aspect of the one party dominance, and we'll also discuss the positive aspects, and later on we will try to find out what more can be done so that even if you have a one party dominance in the country, what all steps could be taken to ensure that these bodies became neutral, these bodies became impartial, and then they don't bow down to the political influence in the society. So let us start. So as you're already aware, so let us start from the Constituent Assembly. So before that, you already know that Government of India Act of 1935. Government of India Act of 1935 gave way for Provincial Assembly. When I'm talking about Provincial Assembly, from this Provincial Assembly, those people were only there, those people had only voting rights who had education, who used to give taxes, or who used to have property. So during the eras of 1935, you will see that the people had limited voting rights. Now, when people have come to the Provincial Assembly, now these people will vote for the members of Constituent Assembly. So we will be able to understand that the provincial assembly will indirectly elected the members to the Constituent Assembly. Now this Constituent Assembly has been given the task to frame the Indian Constitution. So Indian Constitution, and the full Constitution was enforced on 26th January 1950. Now you understand that whether you talk about parliament, whether you talk about parliament, whether you talk about constitutional bodies, and whether you talk about statutory bodies, you will find these mentions you will find mention these things in the Constitution. When I'm talking about statutory bodies, the Parliament has been given the power to legislate, and come out with these bodies with specific functions which can help the society to grow, which can help the economy to grow, which can take care of the human rights. Okay, so now you understand that Parliament may you will have people who will get directly elected, and now to form the government in the parliament, you need to have this magic number of 272. So if you reach this particular number of 272, you will be invited by the president to form the government. Okay, now the problem is that what if these numbers, if there is any one political party which gets these numbers 300 plus, what happens then? So this we will try to explore. Okay, now as I had told you, you have constitutional bodies as well. Now constitutional bodies are those bodies which you may find mentioned in the Constitution. So these particular bodies act as a guardian to the democratic framework, so that even if the government keeps on changing, even if the government comes out with policies which may have political interest, these constitutional bodies, because of their security of tenure, because of their regular salary, these should not bow down to the political influence or should not bow down to the political pressure. So that is why enough things or enough functions and responsibilities have been given to these particular bodies so that they act neutral, they follow the rule of law, and they abide by the regulatory framework that is there in the democratic setup. Okay. When I'm talking about statutory bodies, obviously I had told you that, you have this parliament will come out with a law, and using this particular law, the various responsibilities and duties will be mentioned. Now, the difference between the constitutional and the statutory body is it's difficult. So, if for the government, it's very difficult to change the functioning of the constitutional bodies, because now to change the provisions that is there in the constitution, you need to go with a special majority. And special majority, for example, if government wants to change the functioning of it, government has to go for 2/3 of total strength. So if I talk about Lok Sabha, so 2/3 dot 545, which will somewhere come out to be 363. So the idea over here is that in order to change the functions, in order to change the provisions of the constitutional bodies, you need to have a support of 363. Similarly, when you get through in the Rajya Sabha, you also need to have a minimum of, so this is 2/3 into 245. So minimum you need to have almost 160, you need to have 163, which is a difficult number to achieve unless and until you have a huge majority in both the houses. Whereas if I talk about the statutory bodies, here the provisions is on the linear side. It means that government, if wants, with such huge majority in the house, can change the functioning, and government has done it also. That we will discuss in the coming times. Okay, so let us discuss now. So we have understood what do you mean by constitutional bodies, and we have understood what do you mean by statutory bodies. So let us understand. Now you imagine the December of 26th November 1950, when this Constitutional Assembly, when Dr. Ambedkar will enter into the Constitutional Assembly, and he will talk about some things. What he will talk about, let's discuss. However good a constitution may be, it is sure to turn out bad, because those who are called to work it happened to be a bad lot. Now, what do you mean by this bad lot? What do you mean by this bad lot? It means that this bad lot can be, there can be people who can have political interest, who can have vested interest, who can be a part of electoral authoritarianism. It means though they have been elected by the people, but because of the huge majority in the house, you may turn authoritarian. That is why it is important to have certain safeguards. And how these safeguards will come? These safeguards will come in the form of constitutional bodies which are supposed to uphold the rule of law in the society. Okay. Now, with this awareness, Constituent Assembly members will have some bodies which will make sure that they govern the people. They make sure that they guard the people. They make sure that a certain section of the society, they should not wield power. Rather, they should be regulated. So all these things will be there in the Constitution. And here you will have for certain bodies, which is your constitutional bodies and your statutory bodies. So the idea was simple, that you should have an iron steel which will not bend down to the political pressures or to the political interests. Rather, this should be neutral, so that it's easy for the common man to approach these institutions in case there is political turmoil in the society. So what are these bodies? Let us understand one by one. One is your Election Commission of India, which is a statutory body. It has been mentioned under Article 324. So Article 324 of the Indian Constitution talks about Election Commission of India. Then you have CAG, which acts as an auditor for the government of India. Why these bodies become important? Because now the government which uses the public money, now they should be accountable. So this particular body makes sure that whatever the government is spending money, they should be accountable. They should be answerable for each of the policy or each of the financial decisions that has been taken. So that is why CAG has been mentioned in the Constitution under Article 148. Then you have UPSC. So UPSC acts as an HR for Government of India, which has been mentioned under Article 313 to 320, sorry, 315 to 323. है ना? So the functions, the responsibilities, everything has been defined under this. National human rights. Now, this 1, 2, and 3, these are statutory bodies. That is what I was trying to tell you, that in case government wanted to change the provisions, government has to go for special majority. Okay. Now, National Human Rights Commission, this is a statutory body. So there is an act called Protection of Human Rights Act, Protection of Human Rights Act of 1993. So this particular, under this act, this particular body has been made, and this particular body has been effective. These particular bodies have been effective to investigate the cases of conflict or the human rights violation that has been there in the society. But the problem with these statutory bodies is that these do not have proper resources, they do not have proper staffing. That is why these bodies become toothless tigers. That though they are tigers, but without teeth, they don't work effectively. So without resources, the functioning of these bodies gets compromised. Similarly, you have Central Vigilance Commission. Again, by Supreme Court's intervention, this particular body has got the statutory status. Otherwise, this particular body was dancing, or this particular was the dancing on the steps of the central government. Next is you have Central Information Commission. Although this particular body has come under RTI Act of 2005, but by 2019 amendment, the provisions have been changed, thereby the power of access has been to the government or to the central government. So it means that now the central government will decide the appointment, and the central government will decide the tenure and the salaries of them, salaries of these chief central information commissioners, which earlier was not the case. It means that earlier they used to enjoy the power just like chief election commissioners, but now their powers have been reduced to an extent that now the central government can influence their decision from time to time. So now the impartiality that was there has been compromised as of now. Okay. Now, so ideally these bodies were to be worked like the guardians, because these are just not officers. These are there to make sure that the government do not turn authoritarian. In case the government turn authoritarian, these offices which will have bureaucracy involved, these offices whereby you will have people from the permanent executive who will have regular salary, who will have a security of tenure, they should not bend with the political force. So we'll see what is there. Now the first thing, election commission. So let us discuss this election commission. So what we will try to understand over here is that though this body is a constitutional body, but Election Commission of India, it has been alleged that the model code of conduct that it was supposed to follow, lot of political parties during that point of time have not been following the rules, and Election Commission of India has not said much also. So people have alleged that this particular body has turned partial towards the central government. So now you will read this particular thing, a former CEC, what he has said, that the perception of partiality is enough to destroy the credibility. So do you understand that? Because these bodies have been given an responsibility to conduct elections in a country where you have 140 crore population. So the idea over here is these kind of allegations, it does hamper the credibility of these institutions. Okay. Next, you have CAG. Now, CAG you may understand that the coal scam, the 2G scam, the CAG has been very well able to find out the reasons of the scams by putting out the reports on the parliament. But today the situation over here is that though the CAG reports should be tabled in the parliament by the president, but today there is a lot of delay, and lot of things are not discussed in the parliament also, which actually threatens the utility of these bodies. Okay, CAG. Next, CIC. As I had told you, the RTI Act of 2005. So basically, these bodies are getting power from RTI Act of 2005. But in 2019, they have been amended. And when I say amendment, the security of tenure has been changed. So you understand now that now the positions is under the influence of the central government. So if there is any individual who don't back down to the political pressure, है ना, so certainly he will be removed from this particular position. So as of 2024, over 2.6 lakh appeals and complaints were pending. So do you realize that though you have a body, but still it is not able to function properly, है ना? Why? Because 2009 amendments, they have diluted the act, allowing the government to decide the tenure and the salary. So if you are making this position unsecure, so obviously you want an individual who should not challenge the authority of the government. I should not say that should not challenge the authority of the government, but it should not criticize the government. है ना? अच्छा, next, Lokpal. Now this Lokpal, you must have, you must have read about it, and this is where from where Arvind Kejriwal rose to the power. Anna Hazare, he actually demanded Lokpal. But the idea over here is, even if when it is 2024, this particular body has not been able to come out with a political case whereby, I mean, not big political case, है ना? So the idea over here is, again, you have these bodies, but these bodies are behaving like your toothless tigers, है ना? So this is what I was trying to tell you. After years of public protest and parliamentary delay, the Lokpal was passed in 2013, but the institution had barely investigated any major political corruption. So these are working like a toothless lions or lion without teeth. Achha, when you talked about ED and CBI, again the idea over here is, it has been said that in the year 2023 and 2024, this ED or CBI was being used by the government against the opposition leaders or the people who had dissenting voices against the government. You know? So do you understand that in fact the Supreme Court also had said that these bodies are nothing but your caged parrots. You know? Achha. Now the interesting part over here is with the UPSC. You know? Now UPSC came out with a recruitment policy whereby recruitment wanted to hire people from the private sector. They wanted to hire people who had experience. You know? This is what we call as lateral entry. But now what happened is, one of the individuals from the current government, he criticized it by saying that the principle of social justice has not been followed. Now you understand that UPSC is a body which should be neutral to the political interests, now was asked by the government to take down these vacancies. It simply shows that the political influences these political, I mean, the politics do influences these constitutional bodies as well. Now, finally, what had happened was the UPSC had taken back these vacancies. So this is what had happened. And UPSC and the lateral entry controversy, which I talked about. Now you understand that when the minister is saying that the principles of social justice has not been followed, the idea was very simple, that the idea of reservation was not being followed. When I'm talking about lateral entry, this particular thing is actually follows the principle of meritocracy, or it follows the merit, whereby the priority is given to the people who has a skill, who has experience, who has exposure, who has enough, have done lot of projects in the private sector. But here, if you try to bring in the principle of social justice, you end up bringing reservation into the system, whereby the vacancies now would be categorized based on SC, ST, OBC, unreserved, and general, thereby diluting the whole objective of lateral entry. Is it okay? Acha. Next, you see, now the examples that we have seen, now these examples will tell us that somewhere it is because of the one party who has been dominating in the parliament is taking such steps. To an extent, a lot of political thinkers will go to an extent by saying that this is nothing but your electoral authoritarianism. So the idea, what do you mean by electoral authoritarianism? The idea is very simple, that the people here have been elected by the people, but since they have got this majority support in the parliament, which has made them authoritarian, so rather than following the democratic setup or the principles of democracy, they will try to take the route of authoritarianism, whereby the decision will be taken care by the few and it will be implemented at large. And now this particular thing has been you say, has been put forward by a survey for Center for the Studies of Development, which says that 52% of the respondents believe that the independent institution faced political pressure, a trend that underscores the need for robust safeguards. Now, the idea over here is that that is the reason you made constitutional bodies, so that even if there is a one party that dominates in the parliament, they don't bow down to these political pressures. But what has happened is ultimately these constitutional bodies have been influenced by the political leaders. Okay. Now, see, so in the end, it is not the Congress, it is not the BJP, it is not the Modi, it is not the Nehru who is responsible. It is the people, it is you, it is I who is responsible for this. It is the media who is responsible for this. It is the youth who is responsible for this, who has stopped questioning the government. And that is why these things happens in this society. So it's not about us, it's the citizens, students, and future administrators. So basically, if these institutions are not working, so if institutions fail, it's not because one party's strength, but it's because citizens, they have stopped asking questions. It is the media who has stopped investigating the cases, and it is the children or the youth who has stopped caring what is happening in the society. Okay. So now we'll try to see some more the negative aspects of one party dominance to understand a few of the more examples. Okay. Now, what if you have, so the idea over here is, this is what I was trying to tell you. When I'm trying to tell you one party dominance, the idea over here is that in the parliament, you will have majority support. And this majority support is like a double-edged sword. Why I'm saying double-edged sword? Because you can have negative aspect also, you can have positive aspect also. So now we are going to discuss the negative aspect of it. The first over here is the lack of accountability. Because now you don't care about following the democratic setup by debating and discussion. I mean, you are not going to debate and discuss and then you will, reach to a conclusion by consensus building. Rather, you will try to take the autocratic form whereby the decision will be taken by few people and it will be passed. So there will be no debate, no discussion, no consensus building, only simply decisions will be taken. Next is suppression of dissent. Now, if there is anyone who is against the idea, now his ideas will be suppressed. The organizations will be suppressed. The media will be suppressed. Next, stagnation and inefficiency. Now, if this is happening for a good long time, what is going to happen is inefficiency breeds in. Why inefficiency breeds in? Because now you have a secure tenure of 5 years, and now you think that no innovation is required. So now it's like whatever is happening, let happen it like that ways only. So basically, with limited competition, the ruling parties may resist innovation and they also discourage the internal critics. So whosoever is critical to their policies, now they are also being discouraged. Corruption and patronage may breed in, nepotism and favoritism may breed in, which may again bring inefficiency into the system. And the last is suppression of dissent, which we have already discussed. The civil liberties and the medias will be asked not to criticize the government. Now, what actually happens is, and how these actually takes the shape is, now when you have overwhelming majority, you actually go for centralization of power. You actually go for centralization of power. What do you mean by centralization of power? So basically, in a democratic setup, this is what you mean by centralization, whereby the power is flowing from the hierarchy. What is actually expected in a democratic setup is decentralization, whereas power is given to those people who are at the grassroots level and they are being asked by the political advisors what steps to be taken or not. So when I'm saying the one party dominance, the negative aspect is the centralization of power, whereby the party or the government which is in power will try to have excess of power and decision-making authority. So if it is going to happen, so obviously they are going to sideline the parliament, they will going to sideline the debate and discussion, they will sideline the democratic principles which is there. Okay. Now, ultimately, once this has happened, so you also get to see that the democratic institutions which has been there to be as a watchdog, these watchdog becomes lapdogs. These watchdogs becomes lapdogs. Okay. Now see, second is dissent and press freedom, as I was telling you, that media will be curtailed and no amount of criticism will be shown by the media and nothing is going to happen like that. So this is very much evident by the press freedom rankings, whereby India out of 180 countries has ranked 159. So this shows the amount of restriction that is there. This shows that how much government tries to restrict the media from showing what is there and what is not there. Okay. Next is communal violence. So when you have these communal violences in place and the media tends to show you regularly all these things, so you actually forget about what is happening in the economy, what is the unemployment rate that is there, how has the inflation been rising, how has been the inequality in the society, how has been the discrimination is taking place, and how much there is no, or even if you're saying the growth is, we are the third largest country in the world, so though you are growing, but the growth is jobless, so you will see that majority of the times people do not get, or people don't talk on facts, rather they get swayed by the news of communal violence. Okay. Now, so till now we have discussed the positive aspect of it. Now let us discuss, we have discussed the negative aspect of it. Now let us discuss the positive aspect of it. The positive aspect may easy for the government to take the strong decisions even when it has a lot of criticism. So you have a stability in the governance, and when I say stability in the governance, so you have a continuity with the policy making as well. Next is efficient decision making. This is what I was saying. And the implementation will also be very, very smooth. So you don't, so the idea over here is that once you are going for debate and discussion, it can delay the decision making. But if the objectives are clear, if you have good intentions, then the efficient decision making can be taken under one party dominance. So clear policy direction, which will obviously, reduce the legislative gridlock of debate and discussions. Next is cost savings. Obviously, continuous elections will have, will put pressure on the exchequer. And the last is potential for the development, because now the decision that is required for the fast track development will be taken by it. So without any further delays. Now you will see that we have discussed the constitutional bodies, we have discussed the statutory bodies. Now there is an emergence of new statutory bodies, whereby these bodies will not have constitutional backing, these bodies will not have financial decisions, but these bodies will be behaving like an advisory bodies. And so the idea of advisory bodies is that they will do the research, they will come out with recommendations, and these recommendations will not be binding on the government. So let's just read that. So one of the institution is like your NITI Aayog. So NITI Aayog lacks constitutional backing, they lack financial allocation, and what is the nature is these are just policy advisory bodies which do not have enough power to implement their own policies. So these types of structures are coming up. So what is the paradox over here is, the paradox is constitutionally strong bodies are shrinking in influence, because I told you what is the reason. Because now to change the function of these particular bodies, you require special majority. But when I'm talking about non-statutory bodies, these will directly come under the control of the executives, and now the executives are in power and authority to change the rules and regulations as per their own interest. Next. Now the big question over here is what India has achieved from one party dominance. What India has achieved from one party dominance. So let us see some positive aspect of it. The first, regular, free and fair elections. So after every 5 years, you will see that elections is happening. So from 2014 onwards, we will see that there is a one party who has been dominating. In fact, in the year 2014, they have got 292 seats, and in the year 2019, they have got 302 seats. Although in the year 2024, we could see that the numbers have been reduced, which is good in a democratic setup, because now it is going to help you to take the decisions in a democratic way. Now you cannot behave like an autocratic way. Next is launched of first 5 years. So this launch of first 5 years that you see is also because it is under the state control. Now the state gets to decide how much money needs to be allocated to the agriculture or to the industry or to the skill development. The idea is very simple, that the state is going to follow the principle of social welfare. So such policies which is controlled by the state will give the benefit to the people who are poor. Next, nationalization of banks. Obviously, it is also going to help, because again, when you nationalize the bank, you take care of the poor, you take care of the vulnerable sections as well, you take care of the deprived sections as well, whereby the loans will be available to these people who can improve their livelihood, who can start their own businesses. That ways you can help. Next is landmark policies of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, these was highly criticized that the government of India has not followed the principles of democracy. But the idea over here is, now this particular thing has been debated in the Constituent Assembly as well. In fact, Dr. Ambedkar was against the idea that why Jammu and Kashmir is getting a special treatment, even when the resources are being spent on it, till the state is not ready to integrate with the India just like other states. But finally, Hannah, after 70 years, you will see that the temporary provision that has been mentioned has now been abrogated in the current regime. Why it was possible? Because of the one party dominance that you get to see. Otherwise, it was very difficult to come out with such bold decisions. Last is large-scale infrastructure campaigns, Swachh Bharat Mission, sanitation, highways. Now, infrastructure needs to be improved, without which the government may not, or the government machinery may not reach to the isolated and the faraway areas of the country, which may lead people into isolation, which may lead people into creating anti-government responses. Second, market liberalization has been done. So you understand one thing, and this is also important, that it is important for the government to realize that though you have opened the sectors for FDI, it is also important that government companies also run very smoothly. Otherwise, when you give the control to the private sector do not take care of the welfare. They do not take care of the pricing system. And they do not abide by the principles of social welfare. They only rely on the profit part. So that is why when you have opened these sectors, it is important. Why? Because if you are opening it, and innovation will come, capital will come, technologies will come, funds will come, new techniques will come, which will help you to provide better services to the people. At the same time, government should also retain the control, so that the idea of social welfare should not get evaporated. So GST introduction, again, this is something which is debated. But I mean, GST, it is debated, but government has been able to make a uniform market throughout the country by introducing GST. Government has been able to introduce the ease of doing business reform in the country. Last is demonetization. The idea was to curb the black money out of the system, but again, the response was very, very mixed response. So government to an extent have been able to do it, but at the same time, there have been reports whereby it has been said that people were successfully able to turn their illegal cash into new cashes as well. So exchange was possible. Now, over a period of time, you will also see government have been heavily investing on the infrastructure. I had told you it's important that you invest in these areas so that it becomes easy, or it becomes accessible for the people to go to these places. And once you create that infrastructure, tourism automatically boosted. So the amount of money these regions can earn, it will be huge. So this is the importance of it. Rural connectivity, as I had told you, this is also there. Next is, what is the way forward? The way forward over here is one party dominance is okay, but at the same time, the powers to these constitutional bodies should not be reduced, first thing. Plus, these institutions are just not the marble buildings. These are the people who have a spine, and they should have a spine. They should be listening to their inner consciousness. They should have a moral standing, moral reasoning, rather than bending over the political pressure. So that is why it has been said that all the constitutional bodies must have a multi-member appointments. And in these multi-member appointment committees, who will be there? It should be the judiciary, it should be the judiciary, it should be the leader of opposition, and it should be the prime minister or home minister, depending upon the appointment. So when you come out with this, so it simply shows that there is a transparency in the recruitment or in the appointment system. Next is parliamentary oversight. What do you mean by parliamentary oversight? That you should be strengthening the standing committees which will monitor the institutions, so that you try to create a check and balance in the political landscape. Plus, these bodies like CAG, these bodies like EC, and these bodies, they should be mandatory to give annual reports that should be tabled in the parliament, plus with performance metrics. That is also very important, because though these people are getting regular salary, they have a security of tenure, but what about the work that was being done? So they should be accountable also. Last important point is something called as digital accountability, that you must have a real-time dashboard system using which you can track down the various projects, various disposal, so that the influences under which these bodies are, it should be reduced to an extent, and it should be in the public domain, so that it is the people who can pressurize the government to take the steps that is required, not the interest that is required for the electoral gains. What are the key insights? So it is Congress build institutions and manage diversity, whereas BJP emphasize centralization, quick policy action, and infrastructural expansion. So the idea over here is reforms are required. It is possible that one party dominance will be able to take the bold decisions, but at the same time, it has to be within the limit. It has to follow the democratic principles. It has to follow the rule of law. It should not take the decisions just because of the electoral gains or vote bank politics. That is the idea. So balance needs to be created. At the same time, the judiciary should step in, because judiciary, as the guardian of the constitutional values, from time to time has intervened into the process and made sure that though there is a delay in the process, but it is not sleeping. That's it. So that's all from my side. I just hope I have been able to add some value to the discussion. And thank you so much.